Welcome to Medlines, your weekly resource for quick, credible, on-the-go medical news for those of us too busy practicing to explain why quick question is never actually quick. Take it from me, I'm literally in the hospital right now. Thank you to my colleagues who are covering me. And we are brought to you by the New England Journal of Medicine.
Today is July 24th, 2026. At the desk today, bringing you the latest headlines in healthcare, I'm Eva Johnson.
And I'm Dr. Alok Patel. Over the last week, and what a week it was, CMS proposed a major Medicare payment overhaul. Kalshi opened prediction markets for clinical trials. Of course they did. An exciting announcement for coffee lovers, and so much more. We have it all coming up.
But before we begin, today's trivia question. What three-letter hospital payment system adopted by Medicare in the 1980s pays hospitals based on a patient's diagnosis rather than every individual service?
We hope you all paid attention to your 1980s Medicare history class in high school. But if you didn't, stick around. We'll have the answer at the end. And now, this week's Medlines. Our first story is about Medicare physician payment. The Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services has released its proposed 2027 physician fee schedule. The proposal would move Medicare further from fee-for-service and toward preventive and coordinated care. CMS has described this approach as a shift from sick care to health care. Physician groups, however, say the proposal would still leave many practices facing lower payments in 2027. Much of that reduction reflects the expiration of a temporary Medicare payment increase enacted for 2026. Medical groups say temporary congressional fixes have failed to address the long-term decline in Medicare physician pay.
For 2027, CMS is proposing a lower conversion factor for clinicians both inside and outside qualifying alternative payment models. Adjusted for inflation, Medicare physician pay has fallen substantially since 2001, while practice overhead has continued to rise. The proposal also includes a payment change affecting surgeons and other procedural specialists. CMS would reduce payment when a clinician provides an office visit and a procedure on the same day. Medicare would pay the higher valued service in full and apply a reduction to the additional same-day service.
For clinicians, one of the most significant changes is the proposed transition away from traditional MIPS reporting. MIPS, or the Merit-Based Incentive Payment System, ties Medicare payment adjustments to measures of quality cost improvement activities and electronic health record use. The rule would move more clinicians into value-based care and expand ACO participation. ACOs bring together physicians, hospitals, and other clinicians under shared quality and spending targets. Organizations that improve care while reducing total Medicare costs can qualify for shared savings. The goal is to reward outcomes rather than volume.
CMS says the policy is intended to prevent duplicate payment for overlapping clinical work. Clinicians in qualifying alternative payment models would face a slightly smaller payment reduction than those who remain in traditional fee-for-service Medicare. That differential may encourage more practices to enter ACOs. It may also intensify concerns among independent physicians who view the policy as pressure to adopt more complex payment structures or affiliate with larger systems. The proposal now enters public comment, with broader payment changes likely to return to Congress.
This is a very big conversation about healthcare access, as you alluded to, social determinants of health, all of it. You know, if you're born in one zip code versus another, that could completely change your ability to practice good preventative care, let alone seeking medical care if you have an acute or chronic illness. Oh my gosh, there's so much to talk about here. But guess what? It's America. And when we talk about healthcare, it involves dollars always. I mean, medicine in general already has enough conflicting financial incentives, as you and I both know. But guess what, Eva? We're adding another one, or I should say Kalshi is adding another one. Betting markets for clinical trials and FDA approvals.
Our second story concerns the expansion of prediction markets into drug development. Kalshi is working with the data company Applied XL. They launched 13 biotechnology contracts tied to clinical trial outcomes and FDA approval decisions. The companies say the contracts are intended to make market expectations around drug development more visible.
The initial offerings focus on late-stage trials from established biopharmaceutical companies. Clinical trial contracts are listed only after enrollment has closed. Each market is tied to a predefined public record, such as the primary endpoint on clinicaltrials.gov, an FDA approval letter, or an advisory committee vote. Those resolution criteria are established before trading begins.
The first trial contracts include Gilead's cancer therapy Anito-cel, Summit Therapeutics' lung cancer drug ivonescimab, and Alzheimer trial sponsor Aribio. Supporters argue that market prices could provide a public measure of collective expectations before official results are released. The contracts offer another way to assess uncertainty. They could also help track major drug development milestones.
Researchers and bioethicists have raised concerns, surprise, surprise, about access to non-public information. Company employees and investigators may have early access to trial information. Clinical staff and participants may also know details before they become public. Critics say visible market odds could affect whether participants stay in a trial. They could also influence investigator judgment when endpoints are subjective.
Kalshi states traders will undergo employment verification and that anyone holding material non-public information will be barred from participating. Applied Excel notes each contract will settle according to a named public document rather than later interpretation or market rumor. The central regulatory question is whether those safeguards can protect both market integrity and the clinical research process. And I think that is the question, because clinical research processes are already so complicated.
Call me the pessimist or the skeptic, but I wonder if in some cases the prediction is accurate because the people who want it to be accurate are the ones throwing a bunch of money in it, and I hope that doesn't happen. The launch is also likely to intensify debate over the permissible scope of prediction markets. Kalshi and some regulators describe these markets as a source of public information and a possible financial hedge against future treatment costs. Critics support legislation that would prohibit contracts tied to outcomes vulnerable to manipulation.
To wrap things up, we're going to hit you with the TLDRs that you and we should have on our radar going into the weekend.
This is Off the Clock. I don't know why I did that gesture, but it felt right. First up, FDA rejection letters are back in public view. The FDA posted 14 complete response letters only days after announcing a pause in their public release. Complete response letters explain why the agency declined to approve a drug or biologic application. The public release policy was part of a push for more transparency, but it's already faced industry pushback, including a citizen petition from an unnamed pharma company.
Coffee received a favorable heart health update this week. A new American Heart Association statement says up to about 400 milligrams of caffeine a day is generally safe for most adults. I can up my caffeine intake. That is roughly 3 8-ounce cups of coffee. Moderate coffee intake may also be associated with lower cardiovascular risk. The AHA draws a distinction between coffee and high caffeine energy drinks or shots, which may increase the risk of high blood pressure or irregular heart rhythms.
A Legionnaires' disease outbreak on Manhattan's Upper East Side has now caused at least 3 deaths. Officials reported at least 74 infections with about 8 hospitalizations. Legionnaires' disease is a severe pneumonia caused by Legionella bacteria. The bacteria can grow in building water systems, including cooling towers, and spread through contaminated water vapor. Adults over 50, smokers, and people with chronic lung disease are at higher risk.
And finally, researchers are studying ketogenic diets in people with severe mental illness. In the first randomized controlled trial of a ketogenic diet for schizophrenia spectrum disorders and bipolar I disorders, UCSF researchers reported improvements in metabolic markers over one controlled month. That included measures like weight and HbA1c. The optional 4-month extension also showed improvements in psychiatric symptoms and cognition. But that part of the study did not have a control group.
So today's off-the-clock reminder is FDA transparency remains oddly opaque. Caffeine is back in cardiology's group chat and back on my table soon, another cup. Cooling towers belong on the public health checklist, and keto has added psychiatry to its coveted resume.
Well done, keto. That's a lot to carry into the weekend.
Medicine rarely leaves the desk quietly. We make a lot of noise.
We sure do. That wraps up another great week in medicine.
I mean, every week is a great week in medicine. Well, maybe sometimes it's not great, but every week something big happens in medicine because medicine is the most important news story every single day in every headline. You get my point, but stick around. We'll be right back with the answer to this week's trivia question.
Before we go, here is today's trivia question again. What three-letter hospital payment system, adopted by Medicare in the 1980s, pays hospitals based on a patient's diagnosis rather than every individual service? Alok, thoughts?
My first instinct was it is an RVU, a relative value unit, but that's different. That's not paying for an
Yeah.
overall diagnosis, but this was a big shift. I don't know. What's your guess?
In the rehab world, we now have like PDPM payments, but I think before it was RUGs or RUGs. And so that's the only three letters I can think of that have anything to do with payment models, but I don't know.
Producers, help us out here. Help us out. We're playing an acronym game. Throw us a little something. Here we go. Okay, the answer, folks. DRG, or Diagnosis Related Group. Medicare adopted DRGs for hospital payment in the 1980s as part of a shift to prospective payment. Instead of paying hospitals for every individual service, Medicare paid a set amount based on the patient's diagnosis and expected resource use. It was one of the biggest payment changes in modern U.S. healthcare.
Thanks for listening, watching, absorbing this week's Medlines. I'm Eva Johnson.
And I'm Dr. Alok Patel. I'm back at the desk next week and we'll be joined by anchor Adam Rose. A big thank you to our friends at the New England Journal of Medicine for sponsoring today's episode.
To learn more about their research and discoveries, visit nejm.org. If you want to learn more about any of today's stories, sources and media attributions can be found for all this and all episodes on medlinespod.com.
And if you love what we're doing, which we hope you do, why wouldn't you? And you want to support medical journalism like Medlines, please share today's episode or the show with your colleagues, friends, neighbors, strangers, anyone who will listen or read your opinion. This is the place for healthcare professionals to stay up to date on the go, and shows like this live or die by word of mouth. That sounds pretty dramatic, but it's kind of true.
And now, the part where we remind you that listening to a podcast does not establish a doctor-patient relationship with either of us.
Especially me. I literally have 3 pages I need to deal with. Thank you again to my colleague who is handling those. And here's the part where I sound like a lawyer. Medlines is a news and commentary podcast and is not intended as individualized medical advice. The views, news, and media shared on this program do not reflect the views of our team sponsors or any affiliated parties. To review our complete program disclaimer and ethics policy, verification and licensing terms, and HIPAA release terms, please visit medlinespod.com/legal.
Medlines is a human content production.